In-laws. Mocked the black billionaire at the family reunion until her jet touched down. The sky over upstate New York was painted in strokes of gold and lavender, the late afternoon sun draping the Thompson estate in a picturesque calm that betrayed the tension simmering beneath its pristine lawns and colonial pillars. It was the annual Langston family reunion, the kind of event that demanded tailored linen suits, perfectly chilled rosé, and carefully rehearsed small talk. Beneath the laughter and clinking glasses, judgment flowed just as freely. Jasmine Langston adjusted the cuffs of her cobalt blue blazer as she stepped out of her discreet black SUV, parked just far enough to not stir attention. She had chosen this moment deliberately, not to arrive late but to arrive last. Every move calculated, every breath purposeful. 3 years ago, she wouldn't have dared. 3 years ago, Jasmine had walked these grounds as Marcus Langston's girlfriend, the outsider, the girl from Atlanta with natural curls and a Howard degree, the daughter of a school teacher and a mechanic. Unapologetically black, unapologetically ambitious. The Langstons had smiled in her face and sliced her confidence behind her back. "She's spirited," Marcus's mother Eleanor had once whispered to a friend on the veranda, holding her wine glass like a chalice. "But Marcus needs someone polished, someone who fits." Back then, Jasmine had laughed off the comments, bit her tongue, and tried to mold herself into the role of the perfect partner. She wore their approved designers, softened her southern accent, and politely accepted every backhanded compliment. But tonight was different. Tonight, she didn't come to fit in. She came to own the space. From the hilltop, the estate overlooked 40 acres of curated affluence, tennis courts to the left, a manicured garden maze to the right, and the reunion crowd buzzing around white-draped tables in the center like designer bees. The sound of a string quartet drifted lazily through the air. Jasmine's heels clicked deliberately on the stone path, each step a beat in her silent declaration. She was not here for their approval. Down below, Eleanor Langston spotted her approach. Her carefully Botoxed brows rose a fraction. She nudged her sister-in-law, whispering something behind the rim of her champagne glass. Jasmine walked up just as the speeches were starting, not a second before. She let her gaze sweep the crowd, cousins, uncles, old friends of the family. Her husband Marcus stood near the stage, tall and steady in a charcoal suit, smiling as their eyes met. "Darling," Eleanor called out, her voice syrupy. "So glad you could make it. We were beginning to think you'd gotten lost." Jasmine smiled. "Hard to get lost on private land when you built the GPS software half these people use." A few heads turned. One cousin coughed into his wine. Marcus's sister, Victoria, gave a tight smile. Eleanor blinked. "Right, yes. You do. Tech, don't you?" Before Jasmine could respond, Victoria interjected. "Marcus told us you've been working on some app. That must be fun." "A hobby that keeps you busy." "A financial infrastructure platform," Jasmine said, her tone light but firm. "It just closed Series C at a $95 million valuation last quarter." The silence that followed was exquisite. A few seconds later, a polite clap from Uncle Reginald awkwardly punctuated the moment. "Well, that's impressive," he said. "I always said this generation needed more tech-savvy folks." "That's wonderful, dear," Eleanor said, recovering. "And you still have time to join us this weekend?" "There's a lovely dinner planned with the McAllisters tomorrow. You remember them? One of Marcus's more promising exes. She's newly divorced, poor thing." Jasmine's fingers curled slightly at her side. "How thoughtful," she said smoothly. "But we'll have to decline. Marcus and I fly to Tokyo tomorrow morning." "Expansion talks." Eleanor blinked. "Tokyo?" "Yes. We're meeting with one of Asia's top investment firms." They've shown interest in scaling our model for international markets. Someone in the back murmured, "She's serious." But Eleanor wasn't done. "Of course," she said, leaning in, voice just above a whisper. "No matter how successful one becomes, family is what truly matters. You're always welcome here, though you might consider something a little more elegant next time." "That color's a bit loud." Jasmine smiled and leaned in closer. "Funny. Loud built this." She turned slightly, eyes locking onto the sky beyond the treetops. The distant hum of jet engines began to ripple through the air. People looked up. "What in the world?" someone gasped. Over the hill, a sleek silhouette emerged. Her new Gulfstream G700, gliding low and steady, making its approach to the private landing strip just behind the estate. "Is that a jet?" Victoria asked, shielding her eyes. Eleanor's voice was brittle. "It can't be. We haven't had any—" "Actually," Marcus interrupted, stepping forward, "we did make a small change to the plan." The jet's wheels kissed the earth like a swan landing on glass. The crowd was silent. Jasmine turned back to Eleanor. "You were right. Family does matter. But so does respect." She took Marcus's arm as the valet arrived with their luggage, pulled from the SUV now idling near the path. "We won't be staying long," Jasmine said over her shoulder. "Just wanted to stop by and reconnect." And then, with grace only hard-earned power could afford, she walked toward the runway, leaving the whispers in her wake. Behind her, the Langston matriarchs and monarchs stared, caught between awe and disbelief. Up front, Marcus looked at her with nothing but pride. "They always said you were too much," he whispered. "I was," Jasmine replied, eyes glinting. "Too much for their small dreams." And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was proving them wrong. She felt like she was simply walking in the truth of who she had always been. That night, as the jet lifted into the sky toward Tokyo, the Thompson estate grew smaller behind her. But Jasmine Langston, she had never been larger. The Langston jet cut through the clouds at 39,000 feet, but Jasmine's thoughts were still rooted in the grass of her in-laws' estate, in the silence that followed her jet's arrival. Not triumph, not gloating, just the heavy echo of years of disrespect, finally interrupted. She leaned her head against the soft leather of the seat, her reflection faint in the oval window. Marcus sat beside her, one arm across the back of her seat, watching her in quiet admiration. The cabin's soft hum couldn't drown the emotions stirring inside her. Not just pride. Not just relief, but a strange hollowness. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally, not looking at him. "Of course. Did you feel it too? The shift?" Marcus turned toward her. "You mean when Eleanor's voice cracked, trying to pronounce Gulfstream?" Jasmine chuckled, but it faded fast. "No, I mean, the moment they stopped pretending I didn't matter and started realizing I'd outgrown them." Marcus took her hand. "They always knew you mattered. That's what scared them." Jasmine let the words hang there. She wasn't sure if she believed that. Back when she'd first met the Langstons, she had been eager, hopeful, willing to shrink herself to fit. At their cocktail parties, she had smiled through condescension. At charity galas, she'd felt invisible despite standing in designer gowns. And when she'd announced she was leaving her stable corporate job to start her own fintech company, well, that had been the final straw. Marcus's cousin Bennett had laughed. "That's cute," he'd said. "Gonna teach people how to balance a checkbook on YouTube." Only Marcus had believed in her. When she built the prototype of the WealthWise app from scratch, he stayed up with her through crash after crash, testing, debugging, refusing to let her quit. Even when their bank account hit double digits, even when investors told her they were not ready to bet on a solo female founder, especially one without a pedigree. Now, her company had 2 million users. Now, Forbes called her one of the most disruptive voices in fintech. But none of that erased the early bruises. "Do you regret any of it?" she asked softly. Marcus frowned. "Regret what?" "Walking away from the Langston legacy." "From the firm, your father's plans." He tilted his head, considering. "You know, my dad once told me that loyalty is about holding the line, not changing the game." "But maybe that's why his world never really changed. I don't want to hold any line that keeps people out. I'd rather build something better with you." Jasmine's chest tightened. "You really mean that?" "I left the family business for you," he said, "but I stayed out because of what we're building." Her eyes welled, just a little. But she didn't let the tears fall. As the plane began its descent into Tokyo, Jasmine shook off the emotions and focused. The meeting with Koba Capital was in 12 hours, and this expansion was critical, not just for growth, but to prove that her model could scale globally. After the jet touched down, they were greeted by Rena, their Japanese liaison and regional advisor. Rena bowed slightly, then smiled. "Welcome to Tokyo, Mrs. Langston. The boardroom is ready for tomorrow. Shall I take you to the hotel first?" "Yes, but first," Jasmine said, "I want to see the space." Rena blinked. "You mean the demo site?" "I mean where we'll break ground when they say yes." Rena nodded, impressed by her certainty. That evening, Jasmine stood at the edge of a quiet lot in the heart of Tokyo's tech district. Neon lights buzzed in the distance, and the hum of the city surrounded her like a heartbeat. The land was modest, but the potential was massive. "This is it," she whispered. "This is where we prove it's not just a fluke." Behind her, Marcus stepped beside her. "You don't have to prove anything anymore." She glanced at him. "I know, but I want to." Not for them. For everyone who ever doubted they belonged in boardrooms and broker meetings. For the girl I was. And the girl's watching now. The next morning, Jasmine walked into the Koba Capital conference room, flanked by Marcus and Rena. The board sat still and expressionless, but Jasmine was used to that, used to being underestimated, especially in rooms filled with wealth and lineage. She welcomed it. "Let's begin," she said with calm resolve. For 35 minutes, she laid out their expansion model, localization algorithms, multilingual platforms, financial behavioral data, and the real-world impact on underserved communities. She used data, but also stories, like the email from a single mother in Detroit who'd used WealthWise to pay off her debt and start a college fund, or the refugee entrepreneur who launched a business through microloans. By the end, a few of the board members had softened. One was even nodding. Then came the twist. Kenji Matsuda, the chairman, leaned forward. "Your numbers are impressive, Mrs. Langston. But we've also heard from a different voice, Christopher Stanton. He claims your expansion will collapse under its own weight. He's positioned his firm as a better partner." Jasmine stiffened. Stanton, her old investor, the one who pulled out just before Series A funding after telling her, "You need a white male face to go further." Now he was trying to block her again. Marcus spoke first. "Christopher's model is predatory. He packages services in a way that traps low-income users in debt cycles." Jasmine took over, her voice sharper now. "We're not just a financial tool, we're a movement. You can back a legacy that's fading, or help build a future that's fair." The boardroom was silent. Then Kenji stood. "You're right," he said. "Legacy is earned." "Welcome to Tokyo, Mrs. Langston." Back in their hotel suite that night, Jasmine sat on the balcony, sipping tea, watching the city pulse below. Marcus joined her. You crushed it. I didn't come here to crush it, she said, voice quiet. I came here to reclaim what they said I'd never have. And? She smiled. I think I just did. The phone buzzed. A text from her assistant back home. Langston family group chat blowing up. Apparently your jet caused an emergency HOA meeting about air traffic. Eleanor's in a mood. Jasmine laughed, long and real. Marcus leaned back. You okay? She nodded. I'm more than okay. Outside, the Tokyo skyline glowed like the inside of a dream that used to feel out of reach. But not anymore. Now it was just the beginning. The Langston estate was buzzing with activity, yet the air between Jasmine and the rest of the family felt colder than ever. The reunion had officially started, but it was clear that her arrival in a private jet hadn't softened anyone's hearts. If anything, it only sharpened their stares, a mix of disbelief and simmering resentment. Jasmine stood tall, scanning the sea of familiar faces, cousins, aunts, uncles, all steeped in old money, old grudges, and old ways of thinking. The Thompson legacy was proud, but ruthless, and today, Jasmine was the lightning rod drawing their collective scrutiny. Isn't that a bit excessive? Came a voice dripping with condescension from her sister-in-law Brooke. She was perched by the garden fountain, swirling a glass of champagne with practiced ease, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the crystal. Jasmine turned her gaze slowly to Brooke, meeting her smirk with calm fire. Excessive? Or necessary? Depends who's asking. Brooke's lips tightened. We're just surprised you'd go so far just to make an entrance. Oh, honey, Jasmine said, her smile sharp. It wasn't about making an entrance. It was about arriving on my own terms. Marcus, ever her steadfast anchor, appeared beside her, his presence a quiet shield against the storm. Maybe now they'll finally see the woman I married. Jasmine caught his eye, feeling the familiar surge of warmth and strength. The reunion's host, Eleanor Langston, Marcus's mother and the family's matriarch, approached, her posture perfect, her smile polished, but brittle. She stopped just inches from Jasmine, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. So, Eleanor began, voice silk over steel, we're all curious about this new venture of yours. You've certainly been busy these past few years. Jasmine's heart ticked faster, but her voice remained steady. Yes, it's been a challenging but rewarding journey. We're making strides in financial technology aimed at bridging the wealth gap. Bridging the gap? Eleanor scoffed softly, as if the phrase itself was a joke. Sounds like a hobby for idealists. Before Jasmine could respond, a sudden voice cut through the tension. Hobby or not, it's shaking up the market. Christopher Langston, Eleanor's son and Marcus's cousin, emerged from the shade of the oak trees, his expensive suit tailored to intimidate and impress. He fixed Jasmine with a cold smile. You've stirred the pot, Jasmine, but how long do you think your little empire can last? Without the right backing, the market eats up the naive. The crowd shifted, whispers spreading like wildfire. Jasmine's stomach twisted, but her resolve hardened. She had heard these words before, from investors, from strangers, even from the man she loved. But today, the stakes were higher. Marcus stepped forward, his voice low but firm. Aisha's platform has already attracted $50 million in funding. It's not just surviving, it's growing faster than any of us expected. That's rich coming from the son of the man who still refuses to acknowledge that times have changed. Christopher shot back, his eyes gleaming with contempt. The verbal volley drew attention, some family members shifting uncomfortably, others outright enjoying the drama. Jasmine noticed Eleanor's eyes flicker with unease, a crack in the facade. Summoning her courage, Jasmine raised her voice just enough to be heard by those closest. I didn't come here to play by the old rules. Those rules excluded people like me. But I'm here to change the game." Her words hung in the air, daring and unapologetic. Some gasps, some murmurs of approval from the younger cousins. Brooke sneered, stepping closer. "And what happens when your toy company collapses? When you can't keep up with real business?" Jasmine's smile didn't waver. "When that happens, I'll be the one standing because I built something with purpose. And I won't be doing it alone." The sound of an engine overhead briefly drowned the tension. Heads turned skyward. The private jet circled again, a symbol of Jasmine's ascent, the physical manifestation of a dream built on blood, sweat, and endless nights. Marcus grinned. "Looks like we're about to make another entrance." Jasmine's heart thudded in sync with the jet's descent. The crowd's energy shifted from scorn to stunned silence. Eleanor's lips pressed into a thin line. Christopher's gaze darkened. Jasmine took a deep breath, then turned back to the family. "This isn't just about money," she said softly but clearly. "It's about respect. It's about showing that no matter where you come from, no matter who tries to keep you down, you can rise." The jet touched down smoothly on the grass just beyond the estate's manicured lawns. Marcus took her hand, and together they walked toward their new symbol of defiance. The murmurs grew louder. Cameras discreetly pulled out by younger relatives, smartphones capturing the moment. Eleanor's voice cracked as she called out, "Marcus, wait!" But it was too late. Jasmine smiled inwardly. This was only the beginning. As they climbed the jet stairs, Jasmine glanced over her shoulder, locking eyes with Eleanor. For the first time, the matriarch looked uncertain, as if realizing the era of old power was slipping away. Inside the cabin, Marcus wrapped an arm around Jasmine's shoulders. "You did that," he said quietly. "You made them see." Jasmine nodded, the adrenaline finally settling. "I didn't do it for them," she said. "I did it for every woman who's been told she doesn't belong. For every person told their dreams are too big." Marcus smiled, pride shining in his eyes. "Then let's make sure they're watching closely." The jet lifted off, the estate shrinking beneath them, along with the doubts and whispers. As the city lights twinkled in the distance, Jasmine felt something shift deep within her, a fierce determination that no mockery or dismissal could ever extinguish. The journey ahead was long. The battles were far from over. But for the first time in a long time, Jasmine Langston wasn't just fighting to be accepted. She was rewriting the rules, and she was just getting started. The city skyline shimmered beneath the late afternoon sun as Jasmine and Marcus landed back in New York. The jet's smooth descent was a stark contrast to the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside Jasmine's chest. She was exhilarated, defiant, and quietly proud, but also painfully aware that the real battles were only just beginning. As they stepped off the plane, Marcus wrapped an arm around her, offering steady reassurance. "That was a statement," he said, voice low and steady. "One they won't forget anytime soon." Jasmine smiled, but beneath her confidence lay a storm of doubts and fears. The reunion had been a battleground, and while she'd landed the private jet like a victorious general, the war for respect and acceptance was far from over. Once home, Jasmine retreated to her office, a sleek, minimalist space that reflected everything she had built from scratch. Her computer screen glowed with endless emails, messages, and news alerts. The family reunion was trending on social media, with videos of the jet landing going viral overnight. She wasn't surprised. The spectacle had made headlines, but Jasmine knew the headlines only scratched the surface. Beneath the surface, a darker, more insidious fight was unfolding. Marcus entered, holding 2 coffees, and sat beside her. "So, what now?" Jasmine took a deep breath. "Now, we prepare for the fallout." The Thompsons will not let this go quietly. Her words were prophetic. Within hours, news outlets picked up on the family drama, amplifying every insult, every whispered insult from the in-laws. The media painted Jasmine as a symbol of defiance, a woman rising against a legacy of old money elitism and racial prejudice. Emails flooded their inboxes, some supportive, others venomous. But the most troubling were the veiled threats from business competitors aligned with the Thompsons. It was clear that her success had rattled cages far beyond family grudges. Amid the chaos, Jasmine's phone rang. It was Marcus's cousin David, a man known for his cold business mind and close ties to the family's financial empire. Aisha. His voice was smooth but laced with warning. You've crossed a line. This isn't just family anymore. You're poking at the very foundation of what keeps this empire intact. Jasmine met his tone without flinching. Good. Maybe it's time that foundation cracked. David chuckled darkly. Don't underestimate the power of legacy. We're not just a family. We're an institution. And institutions don't fall easily. She ended the call, her resolve hardening. Legacy was a double-edged sword. It built empires, but it also imprisoned progress. The next morning, Jasmine met with her core team. The atmosphere was tense but focused. We need to prepare for backlash, both personal and professional, she said. Expect attempts to undermine our funding, smear campaigns and legal obstacles, but we're not backing down. Her chief strategist, Layla, nodded. We've already noticed increased scrutiny from regulators and competitors. They're trying to find any excuse to slow us down. Jasmine leaned forward. Then we'll outsmart them. Transparency and community engagement will be our shield. We'll invite independent audits, open forums, and amplify the voices of those we're helping. As days turned into weeks, Jasmine threw herself into the fight. The family reunion's ripple effects reached boardrooms and courtrooms. The Thompsons unleashed a barrage of tactics, anonymous tips to regulators, subtle sabotage of partnerships, and whispered rumors aimed to erode investor confidence. But Jasmine's team was relentless. They responded with data, testimonials, and unwavering commitment. The community they served rallied around them, sharing stories of lives changed, barriers broken, and hope restored. Meanwhile, Eleanor Langston watched from her pristine mansion, her usual composure cracked by frustration. She convened a family meeting, her voice sharp. This is no longer just about family pride. It's a direct threat to our legacy and wealth. Christopher, ever the aggressor, slammed his fist on the mahogany table. We need to neutralize her. Either we buy her out or discredit her. But some voices within the family council urged caution. Eleanor's brother, Harold, argued, she's not just a threat, she's a force. We underestimate her at our peril. Maybe it's time we reconsidered our approach. The schism within the family became apparent, between the old guard clinging to tradition and a new faction wary of underestimating Jasmine's rising influence. Back in the company's headquarters, Jasmine faced her own internal struggles. The pressure was immense, the stakes higher than ever. One evening, alone in her office, she stared at a photo of her grandmother, the woman who had instilled in her the values of resilience and integrity. Her phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. Remember why we started. For every doubter, there's a believer. For every barrier, a door. Jasmine smiled through tears she hadn't realized were falling. She was no longer the woman who feared rejection. She was a leader, a visionary, and a fighter. Days later, a bombshell arrived. A whistleblower from within the Thompson empire leaked documents revealing unethical financial practices aimed at suppressing emerging competitors like Jasmine's company. The scandal rocked the family's foundation, exposing corruption and triggering investigations. The public response was overwhelming. Support for Jasmine swelled, her mission resonating with those hungry for change. Investors rallied, partnerships blossomed, and the company's valuation soared. The Thompsons were forced to publicly address the allegations. Eleanor appeared in a rare televised interview, her voice strained as she promised reform and transparency. It was a hollow gesture to some, but a sign of the shifting tides. Jasmine watched the broadcast with cautious satisfaction. The battle was far from over, but the scales were beginning to tip. That night, as the city lights flickered below her penthouse, Marcus joined her on the balcony. "You changed the narrative," he said softly. "No," Jasmine replied. "We changed it, together." And in that moment, the mockery, the scorn, and the doubts felt like distant echoes. Jasmine was no longer an outsider fighting for a place at the table. She was the woman who built a new table, one where everyone belonged. The weeks that followed the family scandal were nothing short of a storm. Jasmine's life, once measured by the steady pulse of business growth and quiet determination, now pulsed with the rapid-fire beat of crisis and opportunity. Her phone never stopped ringing. Emails piled up with urgent messages from investors, supporters, and media outlets. Social media buzzed with stories of her company's triumph against the Thompsons' attempts to sabotage her success. Yet, beneath the public acclaim, the pressure was suffocating. One afternoon, as Jasmine sat in the glass-walled conference room of their headquarters, the weight of it all pressed heavily on her shoulders. Her team, young, passionate, and fiercely loyal, watched her carefully, knowing how much this moment mattered. Marcus sat beside her, a calm anchor in the chaotic sea. "We're at a crossroads," he said quietly, eyes locked on hers. "Every move now could make or break us." Jasmine nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "They're pushing harder, threats disguised as negotiations, smear campaigns hidden behind polished smiles. But we have something they don't, the truth and the people." Her chief legal advisor, Clara, entered carrying a thick dossier. "I've compiled everything from the whistleblower leak. It's damning. Evidence of collusion, market manipulation, even attempts to bribe regulators." Jasmine's jaw clenched. "This is more than just business warfare. It's an assault on everything we stand for." The boardroom fell silent as Clara laid out their options. "We can file a federal lawsuit, but it will be long and expensive. Alternatively, we could use the media spotlight to galvanize public opinion and force regulatory bodies to act swiftly." Layla, Jasmine's strategist, leaned forward. "Public pressure has been effective so far. We can launch a campaign that tells our story and exposes theirs without losing focus on our mission." Jasmine considered the risks. "If we go too hard, they'll dig deeper." "We need to be strategic, bold, but careful." The tension broke when Marcus cracked a rare smile. "We've come too far to back down now. Let's make sure every step we take is calculated but fearless." That evening, Jasmine sat alone in her office, staring at the city lights flickering like stars beyond the windows. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "You're making waves. Careful who you trust." She frowned, instincts sharpened by years of fighting battles far bigger than family grudges. The message was a warning, but from whom? An ally? A foe? The next day brought a surprise visit. A tall, poised woman entered the office with an air of quiet authority. She introduced herself as Simone Reynolds, a former investigative journalist turned whistleblower advocate. "I've been following your story," Simone said. "What the Thompsons are doing isn't just unethical. It's illegal. I want to help." Jasmine felt a flicker of hope. "We could use someone like you. The fight isn't just for my company. It's for every entrepreneur shut out by these old money empires." Simone nodded. "I have contacts within regulatory agencies and the media. Together, we can amplify your voice and hold them accountable. Meanwhile, Eleanor Langston was losing ground within her own family. The revelations had fractured the Thompsons, with some members publicly distancing themselves from the scandal. Eleanor's grip on power loosened as board members questioned her leadership. In a tense family meeting, her brother Harold confronted her. "Your stubbornness is dragging us down."
"You've underestimated Jasmine's resolve and the changing tide." Eleanor's eyes flashed with anger. "She's a threat to everything we've built. I won't let her tear this family apart." But cracks showed.
Public opinion was turning, and legal battles loomed large. Investors hesitated, and whispers of reform began to stir within the Thompson empire. Back at Jasmine's headquarters, preparations for the legal and public campaigns were in full swing. Press conferences were scheduled, testimonials gathered, and social media strategies fine-tuned. One afternoon, as Jasmine rehearsed her speech, Marcus entered quietly. "Remember, this isn't just about winning a fight. It's about setting a precedent." She looked up, eyes fierce. "It's about justice. For me, for everyone who's been told they don't belong." That night, after a long day, Jasmine and Marcus sat on the balcony, the city skyline glowing around them. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" Marcus asked softly. "Sometimes," Jasmine admitted. "But I don't live in the past. I live in what we're building now." He smiled, squeezing her hand. "And it's a legacy worth fighting for." As the stars twinkled overhead, Jasmine felt a surge of determination. The journey was far from over, but every step forward was a victory, not just against her in-laws, but for the countless others who dared to dream beyond the confines of tradition. In that moment, she knew, no matter the cost, the fight was hers to win. The battle lines were clearly drawn now. Jasmine had transformed from the underdog in a family reunion, snubbed to the centerpiece of a war that stretched far beyond personal grudges. The Thompsons, once untouchable in their old money world, found themselves under unprecedented scrutiny as Jasmine's fight exposed the cracks in their empire. Early one morning, Jasmine sat in the war room of her company's headquarters. Walls covered with timelines, legal briefs, and media clippings reflected the intensity of the situation. Marcus stood beside her, running his hand through his hair, tension evident in every movement. "They're pushing harder," Marcus said, his voice low but steady. "The Thompsons just hired a top PR firm to manage the fallout." "Expect more public attacks, more smear campaigns." Jasmine's eyes narrowed. "Let them try. The truth is on our side." "But we need to be smarter, faster." Clara, their lead attorney, entered with a thick file. "We have new evidence. Financial records show illicit backdoor deals and attempts to manipulate stock prices during our funding rounds." This could be the nail in their coffin. Jasmine felt a rush of adrenaline. "We need to get this in front of the regulators immediately. No delays." At the same time, Simone Reynolds had rallied her contacts. A series of investigative reports began to surface in major news outlets, highlighting the Thompsons' history of corruption, nepotism, and attempts to quash innovative startups like Jasmine's. The public tide was turning, but Eleanor Langston was not one to give up easily. Behind closed doors, she plotted a desperate counterattack. She summoned Christopher Preston and other loyalists. "We cannot let Okoye dismantle what we've built." "We hit her where it hurts. The investors, the partners, the board. If we lose control, everything falls apart." Christopher's eyes gleamed coldly. "Leave it to me. I'll use every leverage I have." Jasmine learned of their plans through an anonymous tip from a Thompson family member tired of the infighting and corruption. The revelations stung but steeled her resolve. In a private strategy session, Jasmine addressed her team. "They're trying to choke our growth by sabotaging partnerships and buying influence. We will fight back with transparency and resilience. Every deal we make, every success we achieve, is a testament to what they fear most: change." Marcus reached out to allies within the tech and finance communities. Influential leaders and ethical investors rallied behind Jasmine's cause, seeing her fight as emblematic of a broader struggle against entrenched power structures. One evening, as Jasmine prepared for a crucial public hearing, a knock came at her office door. It was Janelle Preston, the estranged sister-in-law who had once looked down on her.
"I want to help," Janelle said, her voice sincere. "The family's tactics are tearing us apart. Your vision is what's needed, not their greed."
Jasmine hesitated, then nodded. "If we stand together, we're stronger." The hearing was a spectacle. Media cameras, legal teams, and regulators filled the room. Jasmine, poised and determined, presented the mounting evidence against the Thompsons. Clara's legal arguments were precise, exposing the web of deceit and manipulation. Eleanor, forced to testify, faltered under questioning. Her once confident facade cracked as inconsistencies emerged. The pressure was unbearable, her defenses weakening with every pointed question. Outside, supporters gathered, chanting Jasmine's name. The air buzzed with anticipation, hope, and the thrill of witnessing justice in motion. When the ruling finally came down, it was a landmark victory. The Thompsons faced heavy fines, regulatory sanctions, and the forced divestment of key holdings. Eleanor was removed from her position and faced an investigation into potential criminal charges. Public apologies followed, their carefully constructed veneer shattered. But Jasmine knew this was just the beginning. The system was flawed, and old money wasn't easily dethroned. Still, this victory sent a clear message. Change was inevitable. Back at headquarters, Jasmine and Marcus celebrated quietly. The weight of years of struggle lifted slightly, replaced by cautious optimism. "I never imagined it would come to this," Marcus admitted. "But you made them see that the game has changed." Jasmine smiled, eyes shining with determination. "It's not just about beating them. It's about building a future where no one has to fight so hard to be seen or heard." She glanced out the window, the city skyline glowing under the dusk. A new chapter was beginning, one shaped not by privilege or legacy, but by courage, vision, and unyielding resolve. And in that moment, Jasmine knew that while the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, she was ready. Ready to lead, to inspire, and to change the world, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong. The days following the landmark ruling felt like the calm after a relentless storm, but Jasmine knew better than to let her guard down. The Thompsons might have been beaten in court, but their influence and network ran deep, and their attempts to undermine her legacy were far from over. One late afternoon, Jasmine sat alone in her office, the fading light casting long shadows across the room. The silence was broken only by the hum of her laptop and the occasional ring of her phone. Marcus was away on a business trip in Europe, and without his steady presence, the weight of the company's future felt heavier than ever. Her phone buzzed with a message. It was from an unknown number. Curious, she opened it. "You've won the battle, but the war is just beginning. They have powerful allies. Be careful." Jasmine frowned, the warning hanging in the air. Who was watching her? Was it a threat or a plea? Before she could dwell on it, the door opened. It was Ria, her COO, face flushed from a brisk walk. "We have a situation," Ria said, urgency coloring her tone. "There's been a sudden backlash from one of our major partners." "They're reconsidering their support after pressure from the Thompson loyalists." Jasmine clenched her jaw. "Which partner?" "Greenrock Capital. They're a significant source of funding for our expansion plans in underserved markets." She felt the familiar surge of adrenaline. The fight was far from over. "Set up a meeting. I want every detail." The following morning, Jasmine sat across from the CEO of Greenrock, a man whose polished demeanor barely masked his discomfort. "I'm sorry, Jasmine," he said, avoiding her gaze. Our board is concerned about the recent controversies. The Thompsons' reach is vast, and they've made it clear that continuing support for your company could jeopardize our position. Jasmine's voice was calm but firm. If you pull out, you're not just affecting a business. You're turning your back on the communities we serve, people who rely on our platform to break cycles of poverty and exclusion.
Will you be responsible for that? The CEO shifted uneasily. These are complex decisions influenced by many factors. Then make the right one, Jasmine replied. The tension in the room was palpable.
She left the meeting with no promises, but with a renewed determination to diversify and strengthen her network. That evening, as she debriefed with Marcus over a video call, they discussed strategies to weather the storm. Marcus's voice was a steady anchor, reminding her of the progress they'd made and the support they'd garnered. Jasmine, this is exactly what we prepared for. They'll try to isolate you, shake your confidence, but you're not alone. I know, she said, a flicker of hope breaking through her exhaustion. As weeks passed, Jasmine threw herself into building alliances with grassroots organizations, tech innovators, and social activists. She gave speeches, participated in panels, and opened doors for voices often unheard. Each step reaffirmed her belief in the mission that had brought her this far. Meanwhile, the Thompsons' public image was crumbling. Leaked documents revealed unethical lobbying and attempts to sabotage Jasmine's company through underhanded means. The media was relentless, and public opinion shifted further in Jasmine's favor. One night, a formal invitation arrived. It was from the prestigious National Economic Forum, a gathering of influential leaders and policymakers. Jasmine was to be honored for her groundbreaking work in financial inclusion. On the day of the event, dressed in a sleek navy blue dress that reflected her growing confidence, Jasmine stood backstage. The weight of the moment settled on her shoulders, but she reminded herself that this was more than a personal triumph. It was a victory for every person who had been denied opportunity. As she walked onto the stage to accept her award, a familiar face appeared in the crowd. Vivian Thompson. Their eyes met for a brief moment, a silent acknowledgement of the battle fought and the shifting tides. After the ceremony, Jasmine was approached by a young woman. She looked nervous, but determined.
Miss Harper, the woman began, her voice steady despite the crowd around them. I'm part of a community organization that helps underprivileged youth get access to technology and education. Your platform has inspired many of us.
Thank you, Jasmine smiled, her heart swelling with a mix of pride and humility. Keep fighting. We're all in this together. Later that evening, alone in her penthouse, Jasmine reflected on the journey.
From being mocked and dismissed to standing at the forefront of change, the path had been brutal, but rewarding. She thought about the countless hours of doubt and struggle, the sacrifices made, and the people who had stood by her. And she knew this was just the beginning. Because true change was a marathon, not a sprint. And with that thought, Jasmine looked out over the city lights, ready for whatever came next, undaunted, unapologetic, and unbreakable. The air inside the conference room was thick with anticipation. Jasmine sat at the head of the long mahogany table, flanked by her most trusted team members and board advisors. After months of battling unseen forces, navigating cutthroat corporate politics, and breaking barriers that once seemed impenetrable, she was finally here to present the company's vision for the future. A future that wasn't just about profit, but about meaningful change. Her heart pounded, not from nerves, but from the weight of responsibility. This was more than a business pitch. It was a declaration of purpose, a purpose born from years of fighting against those who doubted her, not only for herself, but for every person excluded from the financial system. She began, her voice steady and resonant. We've come a long way. From a startup with a dream to a company valued at over $100 million, our journey has been anything but easy. But every challenge, every obstacle, was a reminder that the system we're up against wasn't designed for people like us. As she spoke, the room fell silent, the executives hanging onto her every word. Jasmine continued, painting a picture of a world where access to financial tools wasn't determined by family name or bank account size, but by one's ambition and opportunity.
Suddenly, the door opened, and in walked Vivian Thompson, her presence as commanding as ever. The room tensed. Whispers rippled through the gathered crowd. Vivian's eyes locked onto Jasmine's with a mix of grudging respect and lingering resentment.
"I hope I'm not too late,"
Vivian said, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of someone used to controlling the room. Jasmine nodded gracefully.
"Not at all, Vivian.
We were just discussing how to build a more inclusive future." Vivian's lips curled into a faint, almost imperceptible smile.
That's quite the lofty goal, but I must admit you've made impressive strides.
I've watched your journey, mocked it, underestimated it, and now I'm forced to acknowledge it. The room was electric. Everyone waited to see how Jasmine would respond. With calm authority, Jasmine replied, "Recognition is welcome, but it's not why we started.
We didn't build this company to earn the approval of those who doubted us. We built it for those who need it most."
Vivian's gaze softened slightly, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through the veneer of aristocratic pride. "Perhaps there's more to learn from you than I thought." The tension dissolved into a rare moment of mutual understanding, a silent acknowledgement that change was inevitable, even for the oldest institutions. As the meeting progressed, Jasmine outlined plans for expanding community programs, enhancing educational initiatives, and leveraging technology to reach even deeper into underserved populations. She emphasized transparency and accountability, ensuring that the company's mission would remain true regardless of market pressures. Throughout the discussion, Jasmine felt the steady support of Marcus and her team. Their shared vision and unwavering belief were the bedrock that had carried her this far. After the meeting, Jasmine stepped outside onto the balcony overlooking the city skyline. The lights shimmered like stars against the night, a reminder of countless dreams waiting to be realized.
Marcus joined her, handing her a glass of wine. "You did it. All those years of fighting, proving, building. It led us here." Jasmine smiled, the exhaustion and triumph mingling into something profound.
It wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving that a different way is possible. They stood together in comfortable silence, the city's heartbeat echoing their own. Later, as Jasmine prepared her final notes for an upcoming keynote speech, she reflected on the journey from the harsh whispers of her in-laws to the commanding respect she now commanded.
The private jet that once symbolized her defiance had become a mere tool in a much larger mission. Her story was no longer just about personal victory. It was a beacon for others who had been told they didn't belong, who had been pushed aside, overlooked, or underestimated. Jasmine knew the road ahead would bring new challenges, but she also knew she was not alone.
Every partnership forged, every life touched, was a step toward dismantling the barriers that had kept so many from their potential. With a deep breath, she began writing the opening words of her speech, determined to inspire a new generation to rise and redefine what success truly meant, not by the size of their bank accounts or the brands they wore, but by the impact they made and the lives they lifted. As she looked out the window, the city lights flickering like 1,000 possibilities, Jasmine whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." And with that, she invited everyone watching to join her on this journey of change, reminding them that every voice matters, every dream counts, and together they could rewrite the rules for good. If this story has moved you, inspired you, or made you believe in the power of perseverance and purpose, please support our channel by subscribing, sharing, and spreading the message. Because together, we can make the impossible possible.